Great.
Okay.
So
Okay.
back in working, let me
I
go
forgot
and
to
check the
take it.
link against the
Okay.
link you sent me.
And tell Susan
And just make me resend it in case somebody else.
because Susan Borham was trying to get on it. Okay. Okay. Let's begin. Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry about that. Modern technology. Toldot.
Yeah.
Page 124. Okay. Vela Toldot Yitzchak ben Avram, Avram Holidas Yitzchak. And these are the generations, or these are the offsprings of Yitzchak ben Avram, and Avram gave birth to Yitzchak. By Yitzchak ben Abayim Shana, the Kata was Rivka Bas Psul Aramim Padan Aram. Yitzchak was 40 years old when he got married to Rivka. And who is Rivka? Rivka is the daughter of Patuel Aramim Padan Aram. She's also the sister of Lavan Arami, and she became his wife. And Yitzchak turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and prays on behalf of his wife because she's barren. Stories are being repeated, right? So was Sarah. And God listened, and she okay, she becomes pregnant. Very famous pasuk. And in her belly they struggled, right? So the Sfas Emes says, Sfas Emes was the Ger Rebbe, so he said very cute. He said, I don't understand why the Medrash says, as Rivka passed a Beit HaKnesset, a Beis Medrash, Yaakov wanted to get out. I understand that. As Esau passed an Avodah Zarah, Esau wanted to get out. But Yaakov, when he passed the shul, he wanted to get out. I said, I don't understand that. Doesn't the Gemara say that we're in our mother's belly, our mother's womb? HaKadosh Baruch was the teacher. Why would he want to get out? He had the best teacher that anybody could ever have. He says, yeah, but when you have a chavrusa like Esav, you got to get out of the Beis Medrash. Okay, that was his line. He said, she didn't know what was going on. She's having this struggle in her belly, and she turns to HaKadosh Baruch. She wants to know what's going on. She says in Pasuk Gimel, and Hashem said to her, Hashem gave her a prophecy. 2 nations are in your womb. There, it's not so pashut what you're having. 2 regimes from your insides will be separated. The might shall pass from one regime to the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. So she finishes having her days of pregnancy. And she had twins. She gave birth. And the first one that left the womb was fully hairy. He was hairy. And he was red. Admoni, he was red. And they called him Esav. And the next one came out, and he was holding on to the heel of Esav. So they called him by the name heel, Shmo Yaakov. The Yitzchak ben Shishim Shana, the letter of some Yitzchak was 60 when he had these 2 boys. Like Dula Ne'arim Bayi Esav Isha De'atzayit Isaden. Now the 2 boys grew up, and Esav became a man of hunting and a man of the field, right? Yaakov Ishtam Yosef Olim, and the opposite with Yaakov, and Yaakov became the person who sat in the tents. They have Yitzchak at Esav Kitzai B'Fiv, and Yitzchak loved Esav Kitzai B'Fiv because he was a hunter. Okay, for Rivka or with Yaakov, but Rivka had disagreed, and Rivka was more fond of Yaakov. Yaakov Nazir, Esav Minasadev. Now Yaakov was doing what? Yaakov was preparing a stew. So Chazal tell us what day was that? That was the day of the funeral of their grandfather. Avram had just been buried, so they came home. That's what the Medrash says. Why would Yaakov be the chef in the kitchen? So he was and why was he cooking this? So he was cooking because this was the Su'udat Habra'ah, the meal of condolence that we traditionally have when you come back from the cemetery. And Esav had put in a full day in the field. He was a hunter. And we're told, Hayev, he was tired. He had put a full day in. And Esav turns to Yaakov. He smells the good stew. He says, give it to me. Pour it down. Pour it down. Like, I want it now, right? For I am tired. Edom, and he therefore called his name Edom. Vayomer Yaakov, Michroch Hayom, you want it? Okay, we'll have a negotiation. We'll have a deal. Michroch Hayom es bechoros chali. Fine, sell me on this day your birthright. Vayomer Esav, hinei nochil v'chilamus. Esav thought about it. He said, I'm going to die. What's life worth? V'lama zeli bechorah. What is this birthright to me? Not much. Vayomer Yaakov, and Yaakov said, Yishavali kayom vayishavalo. And Yaakov said, swear to me this day. So he swore, Yaakov, and he sold his birthright to Yaakov. So Yaakov fulfills his part of the deal, right? He gives him bread and lentils. He ate, he drank, he got up, and he left. These are all right actions. He boom, 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 boom. There's nothing, there's no conversation. He just did what he had to do. He was hungry. He was tired. He ate, he drank, he got up, he left. You can feel the momentum of the text, right? You can see it. Like there was no, what do you do at a meal? You don't just eat, drink, goodbye, unless you're acting like a hunter who's come back from the field without any appropriate behavior. And then we're told, the Torah tells you, who's this? Who's talking, by the way? Vayives Esav es haBechorah, and Esav spurned. He had no desire for the Bechorah. Who's talking? Who? The divine narrator, right? Is it objective or subjective truth? It's objective truth. When the Torah talks, it's not us talking. When we talk, we're characters in the Bible. So when we talk, with subjective truth. When God is the talk, when God is the divine narrator, that's objective truth. We're told what is really in his heart. There's no debate about this. This is very important. Why? Because this is going to foreshadow a later conversation, right? A later discussion, which is going to be when Yaakov sneaks the blessing away from Esav, right? He gets it from his father Yitzchak. Okay. Then we're told at the very end, by the way, there was a famine, we're told, just like the famine. This is not the first famine, this is the second famine in the days of Abraham. And Yitzchak went to Avimelech in the area of Plishtim. Where's Plishtim? Plishtim is the Mediterranean border. It's where we call today Ashkelon, Ashdod. That's all Plishtim. That's the area of the Philistines. Now, Hashem appears to Yitzchak and says, you're not going to like Egypt. Who went to Egypt during a famine? Avram. So he figures, I'll follow my father. My father I have a Masorah. My father went down during a famine down to Egypt. Oh, no, you're not going. You're not your father. Your father is different. Why is he different? Because he was the Akedah, right? You're going to dwell here. And he says, sojourn here, live here, and establish the oath that I swore to Abraham, your father, right? I'm going to give everything to you. I'm going to give your offspring the land. I'm going to fulfill this bracha. I'm going to give it. Don't worry. I promise. Hashem is talking. I promise that you're going to inherit. Your children are going to inherit. You're going to inherit. So you're not to leave this land. You're basically not only that, you're going to your family is going to be so great. It's going to be like the stars in the heaven. And they're going to be blessed. They're going to get everything. And the last pasuk of this aliyah ends because Avram obeyed my voice and observed my safeguards, my commandments, my decrees, and my Torahs. Okay, let's go back. What I'm really interested in is the first psukim from your test through Lamed Dalet. This last part is added, really. It's not really one united story. What is the story at the very beginning? The story at the very beginning is the birth of two opposites. And the Rav doesn't look at, as we study these psukim, the Rav doesn't read every pasuk. Oh, I'm going to tell you like Rashi does. Oh, there's a problem in this pasuk. Rather, the Rav is giving us a gestalt. He's giving us an overview of a theme. And what is the theme here? It is two nations. It is the Jewish nation, Yaakov, and it's Esav representing the Gentile nations. And the two DNAs are different. The two personalities are different, we're not only talking about human beings, one called Yaakov, one called Esav, but they become nations. So it's who we are to this very day and who the Gentiles are to this very day. So he wants to discern what information are we told. Describe who we are, describe who the Gentiles are. So now let's take a look and see what we can be told. Vela Toldot Yitzchak and Avram, Avram holid es Yitzchak. And these are the generations, the offsprings of Yitzchak. Avram holid es Yitzchak. What would that mean? Avram holid es Yitzchak. Well, let's go back, please, to Perek Chav Hey Pasuk Yud Beis. Just one page, page 122. Yes, continue on. Oh, okay. So now take a look. If you can put your pages next to each other. These are the generations of Yishmael ben Avram. What's the next word? Asher Yolda. Now continue here. Let's go. Vela Toldot Yitzchak ben Avram. Right now our pasuk. Avram holid es Yitzchak. So on the surface, it doesn't seem to be that much of a difference. Each one means holid, Yolda. What does that mean? They give birth. This is the one that Yishmael, Be'ela Toldot Yishmael, this is Yishmael ben Avram, and Avram was Asher Yolda Hagar. Hagar gave birth for Avram, Yishmael, right? Through Hagar, Avram got his son Yishmael. Yolda. And here it says, Holid. Is there any difference? So Rabbi Soloveitchik points out there's an enormous difference. The Rav notes Yolda simply means a biological descent. You gave birth biologically. That's all it means. Yishmael Asher Yolda. You got birth. Holid, however, suggests a totally different story. The word suggests that there's much more than just a biological birth happening here. We see this, for example. Please turn to Perek Nun Pasuk Chaf Gimel at the very end of Chumash Bereshis in Vayechi 50:23. It's all the way at the very end of Vayechi. One of the last psukim in Vayechi is 23. It's on page 288. Let's see, 288 Pasuk Chaf Gimel. Vayar Yosef leEphraim b'nei Shileshim gam b'nei Machir ben Menashe. What's the next word? You'll do. That's the plural of Holid. You'll do al birkei Yosef. What is this pasuk telling you? Vayar Yosef leEphraim. Yosef, great Yosef. You know how he leaves the stage of history? I love this pasuk. You know how he leaves? This is one of my favorite psukim in all of Tanakh. Vayar Yosef leEphraim. This is the man who saved the entire the world of his time, right? He's the one who created the system of how to overcome the problems of a famine. He's the master of technology, the greatest leader of his time. How does the Torah say goodbye to him from the face of history? How does it say it? Vayar Yosef leEphraim b'nei Shileshim. Ephraim saw great grandchildren. Great-grandchildren, not grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Gam b'nei Machir ben Menashe. He also, and he knew them by name. What does that mean? He had a personal relationship with his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. And then it says, you'll do, what's you'll do? You'll do al birkei Yosef. You'll do means what? They grew up on his knees. So the Rav points out, Huldah, I'm sorry, Yalda, no, you'll do is like Holid. Holid means, the Rav is pointing out, Holid is a concept of a birth that's way beyond just physical. It is a teaching relationship. Holy, why didn't it just use the same word here why doesn't it use the same word that it used by Asher Yolda, by Yishmael?
Because Hagar is, I don't know what the grammar is, except for the fact that Yolda is female. You'll do.
You'll do, Rav Soloveitchik points out, you'll do is Holid plural. Yeah, that's what he says. That's what he says. Holid suggests, he says, we see this world in the plural at the very end of Bereshis, and he says that you'll do means the Eben Ezra. Eben Ezra explains the word you'll do not only to mean born, but to mean educated and raised. Educated and raised in this pasuk at the end of Bereshis and Vayechi. Educated and raised, not only a biological relationship, but it's an educated and raised relationship. And there, that is the difference. That is the difference. Where Yishmael, he was born. Yitzchak and Yaakov have a totally different relationship. What's the relationship with Yitzchak and Yaakov? It's not only a biological relationship, but it's an education. He educates, he raises. In other words, you give birth to a child. Is that all? Is that it? Or what else? Or do you do something beyond that? And what else do you have to do? You have to transform that child. How do you do that? You transform that child by educating. That's what's happening with Yitzchak and Yaakov, and that's what's happening with Yosef and his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. He's educating them. He goes on, the Rav says, in other words, when it came to Yitzchak, the Torah is informing us that Avraham taught Yitzchak. Avraham taught Yitzchak, and Yitzchak teaches Yaakov. This legacy, the Rav points out, go back to Bereshis, Perek, Tezvav, Pasuk Hey, 15:5. Go back to page 66. Right? Hashem takes Avram outside, and what does he say to him? Vayetz by page 66, Pasuk Hey. Vayotze also achutza vayom habetno hashamayim l'sfor hakochavim im tuchal lispor osam vayomer lo ko yiyeh zarecha. What is your children going to be? Rashi on that pasuk says, why did he take him outside? Listen to what Rashi says. Look up and abandon your astrology, through which you have seen in the signs of zodiac that you are destined to bear a son. What did you see? You kept on looking at astrology. Well, I'm not going to have a child. I'm not going to have a child. Avram is taken outside and he says, that's correct. Whose children are they going to be? Avram, without the hay, is not going to be giving birth to a Yitzchak. Avram, with the hay, is going to, his name is going to be changed. What is the change? One little letter. What does that letter represent? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hey is always HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hey is always HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is the education that is being taught from Yitzchak to Yaakov and from Avram to Yitzchak and Yitzchak to Yaakov? The Hey. The presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Avram, you're going to become not Avram. Avram is going to be what? Avram is going to give birth. That's all. Avram is going to be, and Avram gives birth to whom? Yishmael. And Avram gives birth to whom? Yitzchak. Avram, you following me? Avram, it's just a biological relationship. Avram has a child from Hagar, Avram. Abraham comes from Sarah. They both get the hay. What does the hay represent? The hay represents HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That you have to educate the child. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does, right? Sure.
If I may add something, the hay in the Hebrew language is the hay hayediah, and this is
Well, this is not. This is in the middle, but it's not a hey hayediah. But yes, yes.
Could be in the beginning. It's like to give a proof
Right.
or a gushpanka.
Right,
This is
right.
a part of the.
This was the spiritual revolution that led our Chazal to tell us the following in Sanhedrin Perek Yutes, Daf Yutes Amud Aleph. The following: one who teaches the Torah to his friend's son is as if that friend's son is his own son. If you teach somebody else's child, the child not only is the parent's child, but the child becomes your child. A Rebbe and a relationship with a student is a father-son. What's been transformed here is fascinating. What's happening here? What's happening here is up until Yitzchak and Avram and Yitzchak, it's a father gives birth to a son. Now what happens? Avram holid es Yitzchak. Avraham has changed the relationship. It's not only biological, it's educational. And that's what Yosef is doing with his great-grandchildren on his what he's playing. He's playing a little game with them on his. That's what the Torah is telling you, that he knew how to do, like your mother Zichron Livracha used to do with the children. What did she do? What was the rock them on the and then play with them? Is that what the Torah was telling? No. He educated them. And what does he educate them with? With the hay, with the representation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This very idea already was detected in the creation story itself, the Rav notes. Go back to, I'm sending you all over the place, but you're seeing how Tanakh really works. Perek Beis, Pasuk Dalet, 2-4. Back in the, continue on, page 10. Eila Toldot Hashamayim Va'aretz. What's the next word? Behi Baram. Behi Baram. Right? What's the now? What does this pasuk mean? Pasuk 5. Now all the trees of the field do not yet earth. Right? Behi Baram. For what is this? I'm sorry. Eila Toldot Hashamayim pasuk Dalet. These are the products of the heaven and the earth when they were created on the day that Hashem God made the earth and heaven. Behi Baram. What's the Behi Baram? He created them with the letter. In other words, what's he? Behi Baram. With the hay, he created the world. With the hay, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, by the way, the Rav notes, the Chazal play with this. Behi Baram. If you move around the letters, what do you get? That's correct. Who's the first one to recognize the hay in the world? Avram. Who's the one who's going to educate his children with the hay in the world? It's Avram. It's that. And by the way, if a Sefer Torah doesn't have a small hay in it, like you see in your text here, it's Apostle Sefer Torah.
Why is that?
To point out, to make it emphasized. Behi Baram. The hay Baram. That's exactly what Rashi said. Behi. So sometimes it's larger, sometimes it's small. I don't have an answer for that. Okay. So this one word, holid, is teaching us a crucial lesson. Let's go back now to the pasuk. The Eileh Toldot Yitzchak and Abraham, and these are the generations of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham. Abraham, what did Abraham do? Holid, he not only gave biological birth to him, he developed and transformed him into who he was. Yitzchak, he taught him, just like Yosef taught his great-grandchildren, just like the Behi Baram, the hay is what Abraham passed on to Yitzchak. And that's why the Ibn Ezra says that, I gave it to you 2 seconds ago, the Ibn Ezra says that the word yuldu not only means born, but it means educate. Those are the words. That's what he writes. Ibn Ezra writes on this word, on yuldu, it don't just translate it born, but understand what the text is telling you. It's telling you it's educated and raised. Next, what are we being told in this passage? That Yitzchak was 40 years old when he got married to Rivka. Well, what is the problem here? What do I need to know how old he was? This is not a history book. The Torah is not a history book. Do I care if he was 40, if he was 20, if he was 50? Who cares how old he was? What's it being told? This biographical information is crucial to teach us lesson number 2. Remember, we're developing personalities here. Lesson number 2. Lesson number 1 was Avram didn't just give birth to a Yitzchak. Avram taught Yitzchak God's presence. What's lesson number 2? Until after the Akedah, Yitzchak could not get married. Until after the Akedah, a lesson in his life was missing. The DNA of the Jew was missing. What does Yitzchak implant? What does the Akedah implant into Yitzchak? A concept of heroism. The Jew, by definition, has to be heroic. He has to be heroic in this world. He has to be able to stand up to everyone and be the Ivri. What's the Ivri? The one who's willing to be different and yet be part, but yet be different. It's heroic. The Akedah transforms Yitzchak and places into the DNA of every Jew this ability to be heroic. Heroic, I'll tell you, heroic every day of our lives, that we are different, that we walk out on the street with a kippah, and we go everywhere. Ruchama, we were just in Hawaii, and Ruchama said to me, wear the cap. I said, I don't like wearing caps. First, I don't like wearing hats. She wants it for sun. She wants it for sun. I can't stand hats. But I have no objection of going everywhere with my kippah. Let them know I'm a Jew. Fine. Let them know I'm a Jew. You know, standing in a terminal and davening, well, shachris is really hard because then you have to put on towels and tefillin and everybody sees you. But even mincha and ma'ariv, remember when we used to go over, you can't do that anymore. Remember when we used to go over to the telephone booth? Yeah, right? And pick it up. You know, we're talking direct, right? But there's a sense of heroism. There's also that until the Akedah of Soloveitchik notes, he is a korban called Kodshe Kodshim. Yitzchak was set aside up until the Akedah not to be touched, if you will. He was Kodshe Kodshim. He was holy of holies. Once the Akedah, he's replaced by what? He's replaced by a ram, correct? He's replaced by a ram. He doesn't, that is removed from him. Now he can return, if you will, and start his life anew. And that's what happens. Akedah transforms Yitzchak, okay? That's why we're told how old he is. We're being told it's after the Akedah. Well, what else are we being told in this puzzle that's important for us to know? We're told Rivka. Who's Rivka? Rivka is Bat Betuel Aramim Padan Aram Achot Lavan Arami Lo Leisha. Why are we told that? What do we need? First of all, we know it already. We knew it from last week. From Chayei Sarah. The longest chapter in the entire book of Bereshit is the story in Chayei Sarah about Yitzchak and Rivka. Eliezer going to find Rivka. That's the longest single chapter in the entire Chumash Bereshit. So we know who she is. And now you're repeating it. Rivka, by the way, she's Achot Lavan Harami, right? She's Betuel's daughter and she's the sister of Lavan. Why are you being taught this? This is crucial to the story. Because what are you being told? You're being told the third lesson. The first lesson, Avram didn't just give birth to a Yitzchak. Avram taught his son Yitzchak. Number two, the second lesson, that Yitzchak became planted into us the heroic personality of the Jew. Number three, what lesson number three are we learning about the Jews? We're learning that lineage is crucial to the story because it teaches us that we only become who we are through adversity. Through adversity. We became a great nation when? When are we called a great nation? Before Egypt or after Egypt? After Egypt. The Baal Haggadah says it on Pesach night. It says, quote, this teaches us that the Jews there became distinguished, right? They became great, only distinctive and distinguished only there, meaning where? In Egypt. You got to stand up to your principles. Then you become important. Who's Rivka? Rivka had to fight. Rivka deserved to be the second of the Imals because she wasn't like her father. She wasn't like her brother. She stood up to them. That's why you're being told this again. You want to know who Rivka is? She's the mother of Yaakov because she was able to teach Yaakov. There's going to be adversity in your life. Of course, what's Yaakov going to have to do? Yaakov's going to have to fight a father-in-law named Lavan, who's Rivka's brother, right? And he's going to go through this tremendous tension of children against children, sibling rivalry, and he's going to have to go where? Down to Egypt. This is Yaakov. Yaakov is being taught, just like your mother was able to stand up to everything, adversity, you're going to have to stand up as well. The Jewish people had to first experience the thorns, the pasuk in Shir Hashim says, as a rose among the thorns, so is my beloved among the young women. As the rose among the thorns, the Jew is not, that's right, the Jew is not going to have it easy. The Jew is not going to have it easy, right? And therefore, he has, again, 3 lessons so far we've learned. Again, Avram just didn't give birth to Yitzchak. Avram taught, educated his son. Number 2, Yitzchak, we are told, was 40 when he got married, to teach us that he had to become heroic. And he was a Kodesh Kadoshim, and he was a Korban. Only after he was replaced by a Korban could he now become, if you will, once again, like all of us, as human as us. And number 3, we're told Rivka, her lineage, to tell us the Jew experiences who he is, develops who he is through adversity. Continue on. Now what are we told? Oh, what is that? And they struggled in her belly. Who cares if they struggled in her belly? We're told what the mother went through during the 9 months of pregnancy. Well, we're told that anywhere else. Soloveitchik says, this is another lesson. The Rav notes that this is the first manifestation of anti-Semitism. Esav is fighting Yaakov already. Esav is the hunter. Remember, we know that. Esav is the hunter. Esav is hunting down Yaakov. Anti-Semitism is, as the sages, as our Chazal teach us, was a hatred that is permanent, and it was prenatal in its creation. If you think for a moment that anti-Semitism is going to disappear, you're smoking something, Chazal tell us. Anti-Semitism is going to be here. We have to be on our alert, and we have to fight it, right? But it's not disappearing. It's never going to disappear. You know, Jewish need to survive, to fight for survival, is not going to disappear. It already started right here. Continue on. Then the Rav jumps and he says, okay, now you have 2 nations that are being born, right? Go to Pasuk Chafei. And Ayetza Rishona Admoni Kulo Ke'aderes Seyar. And he was born, who was Esav? Now we're going to get Esav. We have Yaakov. We're getting a view of who Yaakov was, right? Raised by his father, educated by his father, taught the hay, fine. Yitzchak taught that to Yaakov. What about who's this? Who is this other person? The Esav. You have Yaakov on the one hand, you have Esav on the other, you have the Jew and the non-Jew. Who's Esav? Well, you're told. Esav looked, when he was born, like a mature adult. That was it's reflected in his name. Esav, Ayin, Sin, Vav, means complete, it means built, it means done. It's asu, it's finished. He's born. He doesn't have to grow up. He's grown up already. He's mature. He has a full body of hair. Don't we look at little children, little babies when they're born? Wow, they have a head full of hair. Most children don't have a head full of hair, right? His whole body was covered with hair. He was already an adult. He was complete. Asu, he was complete. This impacted his personality already. This is already a foreshadowing of who he is. From his birth, he had an attitude that no one could teach him anything. No one could teach him anything. I don't need anybody. I don't need to depend upon anybody. Why don't I need to depend upon anybody? I have it all. I'm finished. I'm complete. I'm ready to run. I'm ready to do everything I want. Yaakov was interested in learning and growing, not Esau. Yaakov realized, I'm still a child. I have to learn. I have to grow. But if you're an adult, what do you have to teach me? Who's going to teach me? I'm smarter than my teachers. I'm brighter than my teachers. And that's, Yaakov is willing to listen. Hold off the questions only because there's so much to do. And then at the end, yes. Yaakov is listening to those who could, Yaakov is willing to listen to those who are teaching him every ethical norm that he needed to learn. Yaakov's willing to learn. Yaakov is not complete. Yaakov is aspiring to be, he's a katan gadol yihya. What do we say when we name a baby at a bris, a boy at a bris. Ze'akaton gadol yi. It was ze'akaton. You couldn't say that about Esau. Ze'akadol gadol yi. Yeah, he's already finished. He's here. He's made it. That's the difference. What do you aspire in life? Do you aspire to be a child that is excited to learn and to grow? Or do you think that you're already there? Right? That's the difference. Now you see the tension between the two personalities of Yaakov and Esau. Jump now, next, the Rav goes down. We're told further, because remember, we're developing a picture here, not just psukim of what's, when you learn the Farshim, you're going to look at it differently than how we're learning. I'm learning as thematically. What are you being taught from a story, right? When you learn pasuk by pasuk by pasuk, you're going to learn textually, well, what's wrong with this pasuk? What do you learn from? That's not what the Rav is doing. The Rav is painting a big tapestry, right? And this tapestry today is what? Two personalities, the Jew, the non-Jew. Yaakov, Esau. What are you being taught about Yaakov and Esau? So we've already seen quite a bit. Continue on. He's now taught pasuk Chav Zayin. Let's take a look in 25. Oh, we're told what they grew up. Now, by the way, Samson Raphael Hirsch has a fantastic comment here. Vayigdelu hane'arim. What does Vayigdelu hane'arim mean? They grew up. You know how they grew up in the house? One school for both students. Nobody paid attention. There were two different personalities. Your son, how many sons do you have, Yitzchak and Rivka? Yitzchak and Rivka, Shamshon Raphael Hirsch is very critical of the parenting of Yitzchak and Rivka for Yaakov and Esau. And he's in particularly critical of Yitzchak and Rivka as parents for Esau. Yaakov, you did a good job. You sent him to the right base medrash. He's good. He's going to Shem Va'aver. But you also sent who else to Shem Va'aver? You sent Esau to Shem Va'aver. Vayigdelu hane'arim. These are the words of Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. You didn't notice that your two sons are different. Vayigdelu hane'arim. They were growing up like everything. You bought clothing. You bought the same for each because they were twins, but they weren't twins. They were not identical twins. No two children are identical. You have to pay attention. What does this child need? What does that child need? That's what Shamshon Raphael Hirsch writes. As if they were the same. Oh, but you didn't pay attention. What's the next pasuk? What's the next word? But Esav was different. You weren't paying attention that Esav had, what do they call it today? Attention span, what's that called? ADD, right? ADH, ADD, yeah, he had it all. You think there's nothing new under the sun. He wasn't sitting behind the desk. Who could do very well behind the desk? Yaakov was phenomenal. Yaakov was unbelievable. Yaakov was the teacher's dream. He sat there absorbing it all. The kid who has his eyes glued to the teacher and just absorbing it. And what do you think Esau was doing? He was shooting spitballs at his friend across the room. He wasn't paying attention, but where were the parents? Where were the parents? That's what Shamshon Raphael says. You know where the parents were? They were out to lunch. Who were the parents? Who were the parents? Yitzchak and Rivka. He's very critical. Yeah, Shamshon Raphael is very, very honest because he wants us to learn from this. The avos in the eyes of Shamshon Raphael Hirsch are not Jesus figures. What do I mean by that? That they're beyond mentioning of their mistakes. Lahefech, the Torah is very critical of the avos and the imavos. Of course, they were outstanding personalities that we will never be like. They were phenomenal, but when the Torah is critical of them, it's to teach us how we should act, that we shouldn't do those mistakes. Okay? They didn't have parent-teacher conference. They'd spend 2 days keeping the kids at home. That's correct. Okay. I don't know. When I was growing up, I don't remember parent-teacher. I vividly remember parent-teacher conference. My parents went to parent-teacher conference. It was at night. It was at night. It was, you got a babysitter if you needed, but it was at night.
And now they think teachers are human, that they can
Oh, okay.
teach by day.
And prepare for that night. Oh,
Spent
the world
hours.
is better for okay, good. Vayigdul hanarim, vayi esos, and now tell me what. Now let's paint the picture. Remember, we have the paintbrush, we have our canvas in front of us. The text is helping us paint. What are you going to paint for Esav? Vayi Esav ish. What is he? Please tell me. What is he? Who's Esav? Pasuk Chav Zayin. Who's Esav? What are the two descriptions that the Torah gives us? Yodea what? And are they the same?
No.
If they were, the Torah wouldn't do that. Yodea Said, Ish Sadeh are two different personalities. Are two different personalities. What's a Yodea Said? A hunter, very good. Is a hunter a farmer? No,
Why
nothing
did
like.
they say Ish Said?
Oh, Ish, that's his personality.
Why did they say Ish Said?
No, Yodea, I'm sorry, Ish Yodea Said. He knew, he mastered hunting. He knew the secrets of hunting. Would you please describe a hunter to me?
He knew the outside.
What's the hunter?
He knew the patterns of the animals.
Knew the path. Very good. Okay.
Killer.
Fearless. If I was writing here, we're going to have a board here, and you'll tell me the different the different aspects of characteristics of a hunter. So give it to me. Okay, fearless. He knows the animal patterns. Continue on. If he's fearless, he's what? Totally, give me the next blank, independent. Doesn't need anybody. I go out to the field and I hunt. I don't need anybody helping me. What do you not want when you're hunting an animal? Anybody distracting. You want to go, a hunter goes by himself, really. A real good hunter, Yodea Said, he doesn't want a chavrus out there. Shmuzin, right? He doesn't want anybody else moving. If you're getting your prey, you have to be in the field, silent and no movement until you're able to, in his day, shoot the arrow, right? Or in our day, the gun. But if the animal senses you, either it'll run away and you lose it, or it'll attack you. That's not what you want. Yodea Said. He mastered it. That's what that means. So what do you think that is telling you about Esav? Go back to the comment that we made. What was his name? Esav. Why was his name Esav? Because he grew up already at birth. At the moment he was born, he was made. What does that tell you about him? He doesn't believe in anybody can help him. He doesn't believe in any, now fill that in. He doesn't believe in it. That means there is no power. There's no power above him. Right? What do you mean? A hunter? A real hunter? What are you being told? Well, we're going to get to that. One second. You're not there yet. We're going to get to that. That is nothing. One thing has nothing to contradict the other. I'm giving you a personality. What is the Torah telling you? What's the Torah giving you as a personality description? Remember, Rav Soloveitchik looks at these psukim and he says to me, I have this first aliyah. What is this first aliyah teaching me? Two strong personalities. Two personalities. Who are they? Yaakov, Esav. What do they represent? Yaakov represents Klal Yisrael. Esav represents the Gentile world. Tell me about them. What do you know about them? So the Torah gives you information. Now you go paint the picture. Yodea Tzayid. A tzayid, a hunter, is not a farmer. Okay, but he's both. He's Yodea Tzayid. He's totally independent, fearless. That means he doesn't need anybody. I don't need help from anyone. That's the personality of a hunter. Now, what's Ish Sadeh? Oh, so Rav Soloveitchik points out, the Sadeh represents the desire to master the luxuries of the world, if you will, the materialistic, that which the world produces. I want to have it all. I'm pursuing wealth. Ish Sadeh means I'm pursuing wealth. It means the materialistic, conquering the materialism of the world. So that's what Esav is going to hunt, and Esav is going to pursue mastering the materialism of the world. That is who he is, right? Continue on. V'Yaakov, but now you have the difference. V'Yaakov ishtom yoshev ha'olim. In contrast to Yaakov, Yaakov has no need to live a life pursuing luxuries and prominence. Ish Sadeh is not only that, it's powerful. It's the Rav says it's fame. It's a desire to be famous. It's a desire to have luxuries. It's a desire to conquer the entire world. No, Yaakov has no interest in that. He has no interest in pursuing luxuries. Ish Tam Yoshev Oalim. It's just the opposite. He's content, living quietly, learning and pursuing a spiritual lifestyle. He's sitting in a tent. Which tent? What ohel? The tent of education, the tent of the academia. He's sitting in the ivory tower. He has no, and that's why, by the way, when we think at this moment, and we think of Yaakov and we think of Esav, who do we think can be the real leader? If I gave you these two personalities and I said to you, who could be the wonderful next president of the United States? 100%. That's very, 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 very important in understanding the next story about Yaakov giving the bracha, Yitzchak giving the bracha to Yaakov. Why did Yitzchak, you have to ask yourself a simple question about that, because that's the next story in this parsha, right? You have to ask yourself a very simple question. Did Yitzchak ever dream that he was really giving the bracha to Esav? Didn't he say, Hakol kol Yaakov v'yadayim yedei Esav? Wasn't he suspicious all along? If I was suspicious, would I give the bracha to anybody? Remember, he's blind. He doesn't see. If you're suspicious, you're going to answer the door. What is he went? Well, but you're still suspicious. Hakol kol Yaakov v'yadayim. Something's wrong here. You don't sound like Esav. I schmeck something wrong, and he still gives the bracha. The main question you have to ask is not on Rivka. It's on Yitzchak. How did he give away the bracha? And what bracha does he give to Yaakov? And by the way, does Yaakov ever benefit from that bracha? And further, you have to ask further in that whole story that's going to come up, right? Which is this week's parsha. And Yaakov gets the bracha. And does Yaakov get any benefit from that bracha? And what was the bracha? And finally, Esav does get a bracha at the very end. Was there any difference between the two brachas? It sure seems to me that they're identical if you take a look. Line them up, and you will see. The birchas Yaakov doesn't happen then. When does he get birchas? This is, I'm going afield, but just so you should know, at the very end, let's take a look at the very end of the parsha. Turn to page, I want to show you something. Page 142. Perek Gimel, Pasuk Gimel. He's sending him off to Padan Aram. Remember, Yaakov, Rivka is worried. Oh my God, Yitzchak, my sweetheart, we got to get Yaakov out of here. He shouldn't marry the girls from Canaan, right? Send him off to my brother Lavan, right? They're going to part. Let's take a look at the pasuk. Here is, so he says, it's pasuk aleph. Everybody has it on 142. Vayikra Yitzchak al Yaakov, and Yitzchak now calls him. Who's standing in front of Yitzchak? Yaakov. Does Yaakov know? Does Yitzchak know that it's Yaakov? Of course he knows, even though he's blind, but he knows it's Yitzchak. Yitzchak knows it's Yaakov. Vayikra Yitzchak el Yaakov. What are the next two words? Vayivarech also. Now he blesses him, knowing darn well who's standing in front of him. Who is standing in front of him? Ladies, who's standing in front of him? His son Yaakov. He knows it's clear. He knows it. He commands him. What does he say? He said, Lo tikach isham ibnos Canaan. First lesson. Don't take any girl from these Canaanites. Canaanim are not your type. Kum lech padena aram. They saw Besuel Abiyah. Go off to Lavan. Go off to Lavan. The kach lecha misham isham ibnos Lavan. Right? There, get a wife. Kel shaka. Now here's the bracha. Pay attention to the bracha. This is the bracha. He's leaving. He's parting. He's giving him a bracha. The kel shaka yivarechosa, v'yafrecha v'yarbecha, V'hayisa likal ami. V'yiten lecha es birkas. Avram lechol zaracha itach. L'rishtacha es eretz migurecha shenosana lokim la'Avram. What kind of bracha does he give Yaakov? When he knows it's Yaakov, he says, God is going to bless you. He's going to make you multiply. He's going to give you, you're going to become great. What? You're going to, you're going to get Birkas Avram. You're going to get the bracha of Avram. What's Avram? Avram was promised greatness. Avram was promised where? Eretz Yisrael. Your grandchildren, your great grandchildren are going to have Eretz Yisrael. Was that given to him when he stole the bracha away from Esau? No. Birkas Avram is only given to Yaakov after all of this. Yitzchak never intended to give Birkas Avram to Esau. He knew his boys. You took him for granted because he's blind. Sometimes when we don't have one sense, we improve the other senses. Correct? Yitzchak knew what he was doing. Yitzchak was giving what bracha to Esau? And why did he want Esau? Because I told you, he had two sons. Up here, right now, you have a Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Olin. You have an Ish Yodei Atzayed Ish Sodeh. Who's going to be the president of the United States? I sure would vote for the Ish Yodei Atzayed Ish Sodeh. He's charismatic. He's personality. He's everything. Oh, I'm going to die. Ishtam Yoshev Olin. I'm going to. Excuse me. Who won the presidency in the 50s? Eisenhower or Stevenson? Eisenhower or Stevenson? Stevenson was one of the brightest people ever to run for the presidency of the United States. He couldn't make it both times. He lost both times. Forget about Democrats, Republicans. Those days it was different. Totally. But who? He couldn't even get elected. But who was the general who had the personality, who had caught the imagination of the Eisenhower wasn't a politician. Eisenhower had no business running, but they put it. You saw that. That's where he was. If you think about it, who was the brightest, most intellectual president? Was one of the worst presidents. His name was Wilson. In terms of his accomplishments, he was a disaster. But Wilson was an academic. An academic. By the way, one of the brightest people that ever ran for presidency, his name was Clinton. In terms of intellectual capability, Clinton was brilliant. Was brilliant. One of the weakest academically was a man named Reagan. As academic, and from an academic standpoint, 100%. Nobody's. Trump is beyond. He's not. Hold on. Okay, but if you think about it, because what do you want as a president? Who wins the interest? It's who? It is the personality. So continue on. Let's finish up. Okay. So now your problem. Pasuk Chav Ches. Vayav Yitzchak es Yosef inside the thief. Rivka Eves es Yaakov. So Rav Soloveitchik points out, oh, what does this mean? Yitzchak loved Esau. Inside the thief, he was a hunter, right? But Rivka Eves es Yaakov. Rivka loves Yaakov. What's going on here? So, okay, I pointed out Hirsch's point. But 1 second, what does Rav Soloveitchik point out? Chazal view that when we talk about filial responsibility, when we talk about our relationship to our parents, a kibud av v'aim, there are two halachos, two distinct and they're nothing alike. There's one that's called kavod and one that's called mora, yira. Kibud av v'aim. What's kibud av v'aim? I honor my parents. What do I do? So I give them food. What's yira? I don't sit in their chair. I don't argue with them. I don't stand when they're standing when they're sitting at a conference with somebody. I don't butt in. I keep quiet. They're having a conference with people. They're talking. That's yira. Yira, Esav never had. Of course, yira Esav didn't have. Why? Because Esav was whom? Rav Soloveitchik pointed out, independent, the Yodei Atzayid has totally independent. Remember, we made our chart of the personality. He's Yodei Atzayid. He doesn't need any. He has no yira. He has no yira for his father. He has kavod for his father. Oh, yes. He becomes the paradigm. Chazal say he's the paradigm of kibud. not of Yira. Yaakov has Yira for his father. Vayehav Yitzchak Esav. Vayehav Yitzchak as Esav Kitai B'ti. Rivka Hevet says Yaakov. Rivka understood that Yaakov and Ishtam Yoshev Halim has a Yira. That's his personality. He understands. He has to learn. Remember, Yitzchak, Yaakov is born with the desire to grow. Esav, he's already grown. He already got there.
So I
He's
understand
already
that
mature.
What is it that he loves about him that's beside the sheep? What was he choose to love him more?
He's very impressed with his talents. And he's looking, remember, Yitzchak, on this note, let's just finish off a few more points. But on the note that Ruchama is pointing out is Yitzchak realizes that he has to find the next one who's going to be the builder of the family, the builder of Klal Yisrael. Remember, it's going to take three. Avram, now Yitzchak, now Yaakov. But he didn't know it was Yaakov. He had twins. Which one of my sons is going to build the people? Who's it going to be? Who's going to be the next president? Who is going to develop the next president? Who's going to be the personality that can take it now? Because there's no more than three. Remember that. A table has three legs. It can stand. There's three. We need the next of the others. Which one is it? Yitzchak has to choose. So Yitzchak is very impressed with his son Esau. And he thinks, oh, Esau has talent. I'll get him to become spiritual. I'll dip him into the spiritual bath. But that's right. He loved Yitzchak Esau is the opposite of Yitzchak. And we love opposites quite often. We don't want to only look in the mirror and see ourselves. We know that. Opposites attract. We know that about life. Esau is, and who's Rivka? Rivka knows these two personalities very well. She grew, isn't that what we were told at the very beginning of this week's parsha? Rivka's who? What? We were repeated. We knew already from Chayei Sarah. By the way, Rivka is the daughter of Besuel, the sister of Lavan. What are you telling me that for? I know that already. It was biographical information because that explains everything. That phenomena, that information is crucial to the story. Why is it crucial to the story? Because that will explain why Rivka says, one second, I know who this guy is. I have an Esau. He's my brother Lavan. He was my father Besuel. I know these kind of guys. Don't be so impressed with their talents. They have to be totally, and by the way, Yaakov's surprised, when Yitzchak, I'm jumping here, but when Yitzchak finally gives the bracha to Avram, to Yaakov, when he dawns on him, he says, Hakoko Yaakov, I never knew you had it in you. I thought you were Ishtam Yoshev Halim. I thought your nose was only in the books. I never knew that you could take a Ben Torah and turn him into a phenomenal businessman. I never knew you had that talent. Oh, you have that talent? You mean you could be an Esau? Oh, wow. He gives him the bracha. But what bracha does he give him? He gives him the bracha that he was intending for Esau. And I just showed you. The brachas Avram he gives later. He doesn't give that now. He gives that later. Let's finish up. Just a few more psukim. Pasuk Chavtes, right? And Esau comes from the field, and he's very tired. Quoting Rashi, right? The Rav quotes Rashi, who cites the Medrash that this encounter between Yaakov and Esau was on the day that their grandfather Abraham died. They returned from the funeral. The Rav brilliantly explains this as a moment of true, honest introspection. Why is this important? Why is this important, this whole story? That he came home from the field and he was tired and he was hungry. And what is Chazal teaching us? Rav is brilliant here. He said, I never thought of this until I read the Rav. Yeah, I knew this Medrash. You knew this Medrash. It was the day Abraham was buried. Very nice. Did you ever think about it beyond that? It's a moment of true introspection on Esau's part. Why is that story so crucial? Because what does Esav realize? Remember our list of personalities, Ish Yodei Atzayid. And Ish Yodei Atzayid is independent. I don't need anyone. But he finally realizes, I can be the most powerful man in the world, but I'm going to end up just like everyone else, 6 feet under. Avram, my grandfather, the great spiritual person, he had no relationship as much as we know with Avram. It's not documented at all. The Torah doesn't tell us about any relationship of Avram with his grandchildren, correct? So we don't know of an Avram and an Esau relationship. We don't even know of an Avram and a Yaakov relationship. The only grandfather that we know talks to his grandchildren is Yaakov. Yaakov talks to his grandchildren, Ephraim and Menashe. That we know, but we don't know anything. But he does know who Avram is. Avram is the Nasi Elokim Ata B'Tolchem. Everybody in the world knew Avram. Avram was a personality, and he was a spiritual personality. What happened today? Oh, he was laid to rest. If he was laid to rest, it's a moment of tremendous introspection. I can be the hunter, but at the end of days, I'm ending up 6 feet under too. I'm going to rot under the ground. I'm going to return to the ashes, to dust and ashes. That's what I'm going to be too. So it's an introspection. He says he realizes that all of his work is for naught. I can be in control now, but at one time, I'm not going to be. The Medrash says that he asked Yaakov why he was preparing the lentil soup, right? What are you making this soup for? And he was told that it's the Sudas Avrah, it's the meal of condolence for Avram's passing. Esav admits and responds the Rav Mons at that very moment. What's his answer? What's his answer? Take a look in the pasuk. Ayef anochi. I'm tired. What does that mean? You have to read it poetically like only the Rav does. Ayef anochi. He's being told what? Why am I making that soup today? Grandpa died. I just came back from the funeral. Where were you, Esav? I wasn't there. I was hunting. You should have been there. You were missed. And what does he answer? Ayef anochi. You know what ayef anochi means? There are 2 words of Soloveitchik notes. Yigia kapecha ki sochel, ashrecha v'tovlach. Yigia, and there's ayef. Yigia means I worked hard and I'm tired. Ayef, I worked hard and I'm tired. What's the difference between yigia and ayef? Yigia kapecha ki sochel. The pasuk means you're tired because you were productive. At the end of the day, you put in a full good work, you're tired. But were you productive? Were you creative? Oh, yes. Yigia. Yigia means you achieved something. You had a good, productive day. Every morning after Shachris at 7 o'clock, I wish everybody a good day and a productive day. Nobody ever asked me, why do you say that? Because that's Yigia Kapecha, Kisochel. That's the bracha. That at the end of the day, you should be Yigia, right? Ayef is what? You put in a work and you produced nothing. Ayef, I'm tired because I'm tired. The more I sleep, the more I'm tired. Ayef. He comes back from the funeral. He says, what are you making this for? And Yaakov says, it's Grandpa was buried today. Ayef, I'm tired of this world. I've given up on it. I can be the Ish of the outside. At the end, it's a moment of tremendous introspection. It's an honest moment Esav has with himself. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant insight. That's what this pasuk is saying. Finally, last one pasuk. Vayomer Yaakov, and Yaakov says to him in pasuk Lamed Aleph, sell me your birthright. Why does he want the birthright? Is he looking for wealth? We were already told, Yoshdei Atzayid Ish Sadeh, he had the materialism. Ish Sadeh means he was materialistic. He had all of the luxuries. That what Yaakov was asking for? No. You know what Bechorah means? The Bechor, firstborn, has no power in the sense of power. According to Judaism, your lineage of when you're born, right, has no power, just the opposite. It's a unique feature of responsibility. That's what the Bechor is. The firstborn has the status of Kedusha, isn't it? You have to do Pidyon Haben with the firstborn. The firstborn is set aside as a Kadosh, which means he's supposed to be a spiritual guide for his family. Yaakov turns to Esav and he says to him, tell me, are you willing to be the Kohen? Are you willing to dedicate yourself because the firstborn was supposed to be the Kohen. After Egel Azav, the firstborn loses it, but the firstborn was supposed to be the Kohen. Correct? Hey, what does that mean? That means, are you responsible spiritually? He says, no. Yeah, Esav says, sorry, not for me, not for me. Not for me, I'm not interested in it. Finally, one last pasuk. Perek Chavav, Psukim Gimel and Dalet. Ki lechol l'zaracha etenes kol ha'rotzo ha'ela, v'nosati l'zaracha. Take a look at pasuk Gimel and pasuk Dalet, right? He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells me, don't go down to Mitzrayim, stay in. And he says, Gur baretz hazos, ve'yeim chov arachecha, you stay in this land. Ki lechol l'zaracha etenes kol ha'rotzo ha'ela, because I'm giving this to your children. Next pasuk. V'beisi hazaracha kechofei hashemayim v'nosati. It's repeating the same thing. You stay in this land because this is your land. You stay in this land because this is your land. That's what happened. Two psukim telling me the same thing. Why are you repeating it? The Rav notes that the repetition of the promise to Yitzchak and his descendants that they would inherit is crucial. Why is it crucial? Because the Rav notes two different promises are being made. There is a schus avos and there's a schus bris avos. There's a schus avos and there's a bris avos. What's a schus avos? The Rav uses halachic terminology to explain this. Why the repetition? Because the schus avos means that God gives us because of the merits of our forefathers. The merits of our forefathers, Chazal tell us, didn't last forever. We can't depend upon the merit of our forefathers. Bris avos, the covenant with Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov never ends. In other words, do we earn Eretz Yisrael because we merited it, because we were the great grandchildren of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? No, that's not why we're getting it. You know why we're getting it? For the second reason, because we're continuing the covenant that we were given. The first pasuk is talking about schus avos. We benefited over history because we were the great. Everybody knows. Oh, even this scholar in residence, Leslie Klein, we were schmoozing. She's from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. It turns out that her mother grew up in my grandfather's shul. My grandfather was the Rav. I'm proud to tell who people in my lineage. Sure, I have schus avos, you know, in rabbinic circles. Oh, you're Rav Mushkin's grandson. Oh, you know, then you get in certain. But after a while, it gets you nowhere. It gets you nowhere. Bris avos. Oh, I'm continuing what my grandfather did. Oh, now we'll talk to you. You can get maybe your foot in the door. Can you stay in the door? That's bris avos. That's what the Rav is saying. Why the repetition of the promise? First promise is schus avos. We get the land because of schus. You want to keep the land? You better have bris avos. That's the second. It's not a repetition of a repetition. It's to teach us these two lessons. As we learned a lot today of the in Gestalt circumstance. Remember, the Rav is not looking pasuk by pasuk, word by word by word. He's painting a picture. So let's see what picture it is, and then we end. What is on our tapestry? Two different personalities. Two different personalities that are not only human personalities, they are national, right? They're typologies. Personality one, Yaakov. Personality two, Esav. Yaakov is Klal Yisrael, Esav is the Gentile world. Well, we learned all about Yaakov, all about Esav from the relationship with Yitzchak. Yitzchak continued teaching, not only biologically giving birth to a Yaakov, he taught Yaakov all that Avraham taught him, and that we talked about. Yaakov is totally different than Esav. We also learned, why does it take Yitzchak 40 years to get married first? Because he placed into our DNA what? Heroism through the Akedah. The Jew is into his DNA the ability to be heroic, the need to be heroic. Then we went on, we saw Esav. He's Yodei Tzayid, he's Ish Sadeh. Two different things. And he was born Esav. He was born full of hair. He was already a made man. He's independent. He doesn't need anybody. He hunts. Ish Sadeh. He's interested in materialism. He's interested in his opposite is Yaakov. What did the Rav point out? Anti-Semitism is as old as can be. It's in the prenatal situation, and it never disappears. Don't start praying that your anti-Semitism is going to be gone. It's not. As Chazal say, it's like Esav is never going to disappear. It started in the prenatal situation, and it's going to be for eternity. Correct? And we saw, why do we need to know that Rivka came from Lavan and Besuel? Why was that repeated to us? That gives us a total understanding of where she's coming from and why she rejects whom? Esav. She knows who these guys are. She knows the Esav personality. When Esav is born and she sees, oh my God. Here, I got my brother and my father from me. I ran away from that. I don't need that. That's why she loves Yaakov. This is her dream come true. Yaakov is her dream come true. She ran away from Lavan Besuel and she has an Esav. Yitzchak, why does he love Esav? This is all painting right from the tapestry, the picture that we're painting as the Rav understands these psukim. Esav seems to be the charismatic leader who can build the nations. Yitzchak thinks, he may very well be. He's not such a spiritual guy. We'll give him some lessons. But what we need is a dynamic leader, right? That's what Yitzchak is thinking. And finally, on the day he comes back from hunting, is what day? Grandpa's Levaya. Ayef Anochi. What is Ayef Anochi? He confronts his reality that even though he's an Isha De'at Sayid, what is he? He has to come to terms that he is not going to live forever. We all, at the end of life, end up in the same place, the same tachrichim, in the same grave, the same way. It is humanity's destiny. And he comes to terms with it. And that's why he sells. He says, you want spirituality? I just saw it on this end. I end way too long, and I apologize, but I get wounded up for this stuff, and it goes. But I just saw a beautiful in Yiddish. They're now producing these on YouTube, and they're sending them out. Clips of Rav Soloveitchik he used to give in Yiddish, these masterful, he's a masterful drushos. And they have subtitles. I don't understand Yiddish. They have subtitles, but you see pictures. It's not videos because there were no videos in those days. So it's pictures. It's stilts constantly being changed with the Rav's motions. And you see the subtitles as the Rav, but you hear, I don't know Yiddish, but I just listen and I read and I hear his intonations and his drama. It's just brilliant and it's delicious to listen to. Because it's subtitles. No. These were public addresses that I didn't attend. In Shir wasn't in Yiddish. Shir was in English. And most of his addresses in the 60s, 70s, and 80s were not in Yiddish. There was only the Yortzeit Shir for his father was in Yiddish. The rest were not in Yiddish. But anyhow, he said the following in this drasha. It was a Secher, his father. It was a Yortzeit Shir. He says, my father, and how does Judaism handle death? On the one hand, it handles death, like all humanity. We surrender to it. We don't win. The Malach HaMavis wins. Theologically, the Malach HaMavis never wins. Because we continue our legacy. My father is not dead. Yaakov lo meis. Yaakov, the Gemara in Tanis. Yaakov lo meis. Yaakov didn't die. What do you mean by that? My father is alive in me because I hear his Torah every day. Every day. That's the difference between Esav and Yaakov. Esav, Anochi Ayef. I've given up. Did you ever hear that from Yaakov? Yaakov never says Anochi Ayef. Right? Yaakov never says Anochi Ayef. We're all going to die, 100%. But we know our legacy is going to continue. If our legacy is going to continue, are we really dead? Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you. Can I just ask one question that's independent? This is for beautiful Rabbi Nosson. It's, we know in the beginning that Yitzhak Davin